Hey, um, Dungeon Master ME Dirt Hippie. We're having some StreamYard issues, so I wanted to hop on a few seconds early to see if it's resolved. So if you are still there, can you let me know if you can hear me? Or if anyone who's live right now, can you hear me? Can people hear my audio? This is gonna be funny for the recording. I'm seeing that folks are joining on the audience. Can okay, great. Audio works. I'm now typing to Cameron. Yay. All right. Solo stream temporarily while Cameron's hopping back on. So before that, we saw that Adrian had mentioned that there is a StreamYard issue. I saw the same notice in StreamYard. So we were trying to emergency config another way to hop on, which
So
a
I'm
little
here.
bit, but
Are we the right way in StreamYard? Hey, are we live? What's up,
we are
everybody?
live,
Why are
by
we
the way.
live? We're early. Why'd you go live?
Because I wanted to test and people were already here, so I thought I might as well give it a shot.
Okay, what's up, y'all? I thought I
Yeah.
was gonna have a second before I put my skin suit on, but we're here.
Well, you all saw for a second. That was Cameron San's skin suit
Yep.
in the flesh. But yeah, like it seems like our audio is working now, and then like
Woo.
from my point of view, I'm looking at Cameron. Actually, I never know. Like if you are again, thanks for everyone for testing for us. Oh, what are you drinking?
Keep talking. We'll get to it.
Okay. Theoretically, I see myself on the right side, and Cameron is on the left with his new camera, so maybe he's a little sharper. And yeah. How are you doing? So it seems like we had a rocket ship emergency malfunction.
Yeah, spacecraft
before takeoff.
had to exit through the rearward doors. No,
exactly.
It was goofy. I mean, like it's obviously everything goes down, but StreamYard going down 20 minutes before the stream was not good. It was a good drill though. That was a good practice.
It was. I feel like we were very calm. Yep. Mostly because you were the one futzing and I was the one doing our usual other stuff.
So chat, so to recreate, Kristen sends me a Telegram message. I don't even think you sent anything other than like the screenshot of Adrian's stream of being like, hey, we're having problems with audio. And I was like, okay. And we got on to StreamYard because like the admin dash still, the like our screen still worked. And we were just like, oh, what do we do? I don't know. And then I said, maybe OBS. And Kristen was just like, cool, you're going to have to do it. And so I was like, roger that, and opened it up and started cranking.
You see, like the rocket ship was kind of gonna have to take off, and I still have to do my pre-show pre-scheduling of the cast. So we had to delegate our work.
Oh, have you made your post yet? I have not.
Oh, I did. Yeah, that's what I was doing while you were futzing with OBS, which is the original streaming software. Back in the day, we both used it for another platform.
That's what it stands for. Original broadcasting software.
Oh yeah. It's a classic.
No, it's not.
It's one of those things where I feel like
that's fake news.
Oh,
don't listen to that.
Oh, I believed you. But I think like it's one of them like those software that is like so hard to use, but once you get it, you get it.
Yeah, it's very much a pro, like a professional or a prosumer product, which is like a shame that really good things are also associated with like being impossible to use, because it's like it's like a mission control dashboard. It has all these like knobs and levers on there that you got to know what they mean. I have some nitpicks about our concept of rocket ship, but let me send out one cast. So entertain everyone.
I'll entertain everyone. All right. Hey, I'll properly greet folks in the chat. So thanks so much for joining us, Dungeon Master ME. What does ME stand for? Is it because of your state that you live in? Cool Beans, Mariam, thank you so much for joining us. Um, and yes, lizard skin was observed. That's so funny. Actually, I had a debate with Sam about whether what layer of skin suit or what texture of skin suit everyone is wearing. Because sometimes, when I was telling them about something good that happened, and I was like, okay, now I have to put on my big girl suit or whatever. And I was like, is it lizard though? In this situation, I feel like I associate lizard skin with like corporate situation, and then like there's I think at times like we do have to put on some skin, right? Like, obviously when we're live streaming, we're a little bit more lively, and like extroverted. But then that what animal skin really represents that because it's not as like obviously as fake as a corporate lizard skin. So I would love some suggestions on the skin texture that represents the different masks we put on to interact with human beings. Oh, I see here. It's a domain. I don't have the website built yet though. Oh, is it one of those never never finished websites? Um I feel like website building is something that should really come back. And I think Cameron and I had lots of debate about that because like to me, like my website is like a representation of my inner world. And so when I feel like it is out of date or like I have moved on to another like doing another thing in my life, I always feel very self-conscious when my website doesn't properly reflect that.
Oh man, there was a lot in there. Also, do our lights match up?
No.
Y'all, when we say we're doing it live, like we're friggin' doing it live. Is this better? I felt like I was a little too orange.
Um
I don't know. This is probably fine.
is that the maximum brightness of your lights?
Oh yeah. Kristen, I'm in a cave right now. I'm in a cave in Pakistan.
Have
Some
you
people will get that reference. But the no, I
is
mean
it
this is as bright as it's gonna go, unless we want to switch to the neutral and then it comes out a little bit brighter.
oh. Eh.
But
It'll work.
I this one. Do you want this one? You're in charge. Kristen's my boss, guys.
How about this? Not that, I think oftentimes I'm the one with the issues anyway, but here, I tone myself down.
Thank you.
So
So, am I good? Actually, chat. Right, Cameron looks better. What score one for the guy in the cave?
wait, it says right camera.
Oh, dang it! That's
I
Kristen.
I don't know. I don't know which side I'm on because I don't know whether this is all mirrored. So, Breck, tell us by person which one looks better.
Yeah.
Like, so
Tell us which one of us is hotter, is what Kristen's asking.
yeah, remember that was a thing? I mean, I'm sure it's still a thing, the hotornot.com.
This is just an elaborate hot or not sketch. I like that.
Yeah.
I
So
kind of like this one a little bit better. I think
cool.
this matches a little bit. I know it's darker.
I feel like I've given up on this whole camera thing because what I see, like you and I both like really crisp, but
Yeah,
whatever that's streamed to YouTube, it's never as good. So
we'll see. This is the first with me streaming with this one. So this one I could be look super crisp.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, I did not change my PFP. Thank you for the call frame on. Kristen, can you explain what rocket ships are while I catch up with
So
the PFP thing?
yes, so to recap, we ended last episode talking about how sometimes opportunities like arise in our lives and we call them rocket ships, right? Because it's like kind of like hitting a product market fit like PMF sort of feeling of like, oh my god, everything is gonna take off now, and like you have to make a life decision as to whether you're gonna hang on to this opportunity or not. So at first we actually meant it in a metaphorical way, right? Of like, there are these junctions in your life.
Yep.
But then you started bringing up actual rocket ship stuff, and I was very confused.
Well, okay. So I'm a space nerd, right? Like I studied physics. Of course I care about space.
Oh, I
But
didn't realize that was a prerequisite.
I mean, it's not a prerequisite, but like, okay, so there's only a couple types of physics people, right? So like, if you study physics, you probably there's like you're either going to go the astronomy route, which is like hardcore physics, like space nerd,
Mm-hmm.
or you're going to go the like quantum, like researchy kind of route, or and then there's kind of like some operator physicists, which are like fluid mechanic type researchers. And then there's the physics people who like physics, but they're going to do something else. I'm in that category, right? Like where, because I went into the army and I'm not going to go back and get like a physics PhD or anything like that. I would say most people that study physics are in that camp. But if
Oh.
they're not, they're like a big space nerd, or they're a quantum nerd, or they're like,
Mm-hmm.
again, this like, I don't know what the word is. It's just like an operator physics person where they're still academic, but they're like
Mm-hmm.
very pragmatic about it.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
but I
And
love space.
you were telling me about max Q pressure.
Well, so actually, I wanted that to be the name of the episode. I guess I didn't communicate that.
Max Q pressure. What's the
So
name of
so
the episode?
so it's the
It
it's
sounds like we're QAnon.
no. So Max Q, if you have you ever watched like a SpaceX launch?
No, actually,
So
I have not.
I recommend it. It's actually really inspiring. You know, there's obviously a ton of baggage with SpaceX, but the fact is if you aren't a big fan of Elon, but you're a space nerd, you pretty much have to accept the fact that he has done more for advancing human spaceflight in the past 30 years than pretty much anybody else on Earth. And he also did tell Taylor Swift that he would get her pregnant if she wanted. Like he is both of these
Well, you
things.
don't need to elaborate on all the downsides.
But I mean, it's a tough thing that you have to accept if you like space today, and you're not like a hardcore Elon simp. Anyway, so Max Q is the technical definition. You can look it up on Wikipedia, but it's basically the point in a space flight where there's going to be the most types and like strength of pressure on a spacecraft. And so like as you go up into the atmosphere, you're getting buffeted with all of these atmospheric forces, as well as getting buffeted by the force of the rocket itself. And so, but as you get up into space, there's less atmospheric pressure on you because there's no atmosphere in space. And so there's like this trade-off point where you can accelerate more, but it's not going to increase that that like dynamic pressure that you're getting from, I believe it's dynamic pressure getting from the atmosphere. And so like max Q is the point that spacecraft typically rip themselves apart on a launch. And so like once it gets through max Q, then it's better. Also, I can't hear you if you're talking. Yeah. Anyway, chat, can you hear Kristen? Yeah, F equals ma got me through physics class. That's a classic one. That's a good one. My favorite micro equation is actually the equation for momentum. Can anyone in the chat, do y'all know what the equation for momentum is? It's pretty simple. I'll give you a hint. It starts with a P. I heard something. There you go. All right. Nope. I can hear you. Maybe.
Okay. Your quiz
good.
question is too hard for me. I don't know the answer.
It's P equals mv. The symbol for momentum is P, so I always call it momentum. Now you'll never forget.
Oh, okay.
So momentum is mass times velocity. P equals mv.
So, as a metaphorical analogy, as one does when one is not a physics major, the max Q is almost like if you're a person who's a rocket ship.
Yeah.
The point of breakdown, right? Like, what is the one thing you can't handle that causes you to crumble?
Yeah, or like what's the point where things are all happening at once, and it's like when you're going to drop the balls that you're juggling, what you're most likely going to drop the juggling balls.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted this episode to be max Q because
Mm-hmm.
that's a fun moment to talk about. We could still do a future one. Maybe we stick to the rocket ship topic of like, hey, you may be presented with things in your life, or think you're about to be presented with things in your life, or get into an environment where something is happening that makes you think, oh, this could really go somewhere.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of things in there that are important to think about before you're in that moment, at least I found, because once you're in the moment, there's a lot of things happening, and you want to kind of have at the very least, a checklist of things to do when you
Mhm.
get into a spot where you're like, oh, this might be a rocket ship. Maybe I run through my rocket ship drill.
Yeah, and so related to one of the essays you've written on Wiser, your Substack,
Hmm.
I feel like there's also this analogy of lightening your load, right? Like, I don't know much about rocket ships, but my understanding is that you have to design it to be as light as possible, so that you can, exit into space.
Sure.
And I feel
Yeah.
like that's the analogy of what is your existential downside. Like, you have to minimize it so that there's the least dependencies you have of that will interfere with your ability to hang on in a rocket ship situation.
That's interesting. So I view it a little bit differently, but obviously I'm thinking about it as we love shoving metaphors into places where they probably shouldn't go on this show, if you haven't figured out.
I thought
Uh,
life is a metaphor.
I mean, it's also what you experience, but the I actually I fundamentally I want to say this. I don't think life is a metaphor. I enjoy metaphor. I think life is the thing that you do in your like as you go about your day to day. And so it itself isn't a metaphor for me because I don't think there's anything next, right? Like life as a metaphor needs to exist in reference to other things, or something needs to look at it. And if anything, it would be a metaphor for God's watching us. I don't know. That's a weird rabbit hole, Kristen. What did you mean by that?
I meant it in terms of the fact that we can, without a lot of practice and other things, like what I'm experiencing right now is always filtered by my sensory biases.
Okay,
So in
sure.
a sense, I'm always experiencing a metaphor, like the Plato's cave kind of situation.
Got it. Okay, so I describe that as not experiencing life, but a simulacrum of life,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
which is
exactly.
like the same thing.
GM
Okay.
tutorizing. We've already
What's up,
gotten
man?
into
Welcome. Welcome.
these topics
It's
somehow.
already been a trip. Okay. So
So yeah,
the
so
essay
back to
that I
lightening
wrote,
the load. What do you think? Like,
yeah, okay. So capping your existential downside is less
mhm.
about lightening the load and more about handling the failure condition.
Mm,
Because like the history of rockets is the history of explosions and failure. Like
mhm,
the whole point is to get something that flies to space, but
mhm,
the only way that you can get a thing that potentially flies to space is if you put a ton of fuel, like explosive fuel, into a machine and
mhm,
hope it doesn't blow up on the way there.
mhm,
And it goes to where you got to do the math to make sure that it goes in the direction you want, whatever. And so like the existential downside, like the big one is dying, right? In a
mhm,
rocket ship and in life. And so when I'm talking about like capping existential downside, it's really like, what is the equivalent of death for you? And obviously death is one, but for a lot of people it's like ego death, or for
mhm,
me for a long time my existential loss scenario or downside scenario was having to move back to my hometown. Cuz that would have been a real big sense of like failure for me if I had to go back, that I couldn't
mhm.
sustain myself outside of my town. And so like,
Same. I would say that that is also my existential
yeah,
ego death.
no shade to Woodstock, Georgia. I just didn't want to go back. Um,
Yeah.
the yeah, and so like, what I think is useful to think about is, if you know your existential downside and you truly aren't going to get back to that spot because you've done something. Like for me, once I'd saved up enough, I knew I could, live for a year or two somewhere outside of my town. I was like, oh, that's not my failure case anymore because that's not going to happen.
Mhm,
Um, that is the thing that lets you have the courage to get on the rocket ship in the first place,
mhm,
but it doesn't necessarily help the journey or like steer the ship better or like hang on better, other than like the morale boost. lightening the load though is a little bit different because, like, to your point,
Maybe it's more
rocket.
closer to runway, like financially
I mean,
lightening your load.
if we're gonna shove this metaphor into it, then I think it's like it helps you grip the rocket ship better because, like, ideally you'd like to be in the rocket ship, but often you just have to hold on to the outside.
Yeah, yeah. In this analogy, unfortunately, we're all on the outside of the rocket ship.
We're not the pilot of it for the most part.
Hmm.
The Oh, I didn't answer your question. I'm drinking a Huel energy drink today.
I didn't know they made that.
Me either. That's why I bought a case. And so I gotta
Have you
say,
tried their more Soylent like stuff?
yeah. All right. So I'm not a Huberman bro. I'm not like a big longevity person. I care about lifting and my physical health because like I like feeling comfortable in my own skin and having like strength and stuff like that. But I don't. It's not like something that I want to pursue to its absolute limits, like a lot of people,
Hmm.
or some people. And so, but I do have a biology that is hard to fight. And so, like, it's hard to tell from the camera, but all of the men on my dad's side of the family are roughly my like size and build and body type.
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm 5'9" on a tall day, like generally stocky. The way I describe like my archetype is kind of like, I don't know. I could be like, the starter town in a fantasy video game where like the mini boss of the town is like the douchebag blacksmith's son, where he's like
Hmm.
he's like athletic, but he's, also kind of looks like a thumb. That's like sometimes how I view myself, believe it or not. But anyway, so like I've
Chat,
watched.
please correct
Yeah,
Cameron's
compliment me,
self-image.
please, or just roast me. I don't care. Yeah, portly merchant.
Oh my
No, like,
god.
so
You
but
did
so
not do a cold plunge this morning. Is this
no,
the
I did
vibe
not.
that we're getting here?
I do. So I again, I'm not like a cold plunge, like health bro or anything like that. I do really
Mhm.
like the Finnish sauna. I had the privilege to go up to Finland, and that was like
Oh,
awesome.
that's pretty sweet. Yeah.
But so
So fuel
I
helps
can't
you.
eat. I can't eat what I want to eat, Kristen. Because if I eat what I want to eat, I will. I have like a month before I turn directly into portly merchant that Catch 22 is
Oh,
roasting me
okay,
with.
okay. Well, I mean, same here, but I did succumb. Like speaking of like not minimizing, I did succumb to eggnog this season. Oh man, like
I'm
this
not
is
a
like
big
my
fan.
one thing. Okay, it's the holidays. The one thing that like I know is not good for me, but I really love, and it's like seasonal enough that I can't get it other times. Is freaking eggnog, specifically the Strauss one.
That's so interesting. Like,
Yeah, yeah. And actually, I
I'm
have a
not.
friend from Georgia, and I was like saying, "Oh no, it's almost out of stock." And he was like, "Yeah, it's always out of stock in Georgia." And then I was like, "Oh, what do you do when it's out of stock in Georgia?" And he said, "You just cut open a Georgia guy, and then it comes out their bloodstream."
That's
So,
funny.
so I was wondering your thoughts on eggnog. Actually,
No, I'm not a big fan. I'm not gonna yuck your
you're not
yum.
you're
It's
not a
just
big
not for
fan. It's
me.
just such a specific thing, though. It's like if you don't like nutmeg, like it's
Yeah,
very
no,
weird spice, you won't like eggnog.
yeah, and it's just like
I do agree.
it's a
Eggnog is rocket
little too
fuel.
thick for me. It's like too reminiscent of like oyster texture. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, 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 it's got that goopiness. But,
Yeah.
okay, so your Huel drink, it doesn't have that texture?
So I am inured against it in
Mhm.
protein shake form because I've had so much protein shake stuff my
Oh,
like for the past 15 years that
mhm,
that doesn't bother me really. And so I don't like the unmixed Huel powder. I tried that.
mhm.
Um, it doesn't mix well. They don't have a good shaker bottle. Even like they haven't figured out how to do that, the make your own. If you spring for the pre-made shakes, they're blended well enough that like I would consider it like, I don't know, top 20-25% meal replacement
Okay.
shakes because I've tried a ton.
Yeah,
And
yeah. Even
top
Soylent,
25.
I think, is actually okay. It's not as
Yeah,
bad as I thought.
like it's obviously not as good as food, but it's
No.
better than a pure protein shake
It's like
in
a thick
terms of like,
Chinese soy milk.
yeah. And so like for me, it's obviously all calories in versus calories out if you have like
Mhm.
a generally right macronutrient balance. And so like for me, I just will forego a meal to have the protein shakes so that I can, have like eat out at dinner, right? Because if you eat out like
Mm,
2 times a day, it's like impossible to have like a reasonable calorie count if you're like actively lifting.
mhm.
And so like
Agree.
that's my replacement there. I got the Huel energy drinks because I was just like, what could this possibly be?
Mhm.
I am kind of disappointed to report that like it doesn't taste as good as the other energy drinks. And I consider myself an energy drink stan, like connoisseur. But I do feel the best after drinking this. After like having 4 or 5 of these, it's like not in a row, like over the past few weeks. It's it's unfortunately I drink it and I'm like, oh, I'm not like super
Hangry.
anxious. I'm not hangry. I'm not jittery or I'm not
Oh.
distracted.
Actually, can you show the can? I'm curious what flavor this one is.
This
And we're
one
not
is
sponsored by Huel,
yeah,
though
we
we
are.
would
Send
be
us a
very
case.
happy to be sponsored.
Yeah.
Yeah, is that a pineapple? Like,
Yeah,
what
it's
am I
pineapple
looking at?
mango.
Oh, okay. So it's
Well,
like both an energy drink and a protein drink at the same time?
no, it's not a protein drink. It is
Oh.
it has like the magnesium, it has the, vitamin, all the they just show it, their plant supplement, like their greens.
Mhm.
They shoved all that stuff into this.
Oh, okay. Does it also have caffeine in it?
It
Deuterizer.
has 1 coffee cup's worth of caffeine. So that's why it's like not
Mm.
aggressive, but it has its like B12, B6.
Mhm.
I would say the only thing that's like, yeah, everything else is like none of it's the classic supplement, hey, give you 10,000% of your daily dose. It's all
Mhm.
like it's kind of like a multivitamin. It's closer to Celsius than Monster, if that makes
Right,
sense.
right. Yeah. And I like how, I love how the Master mentioned that it's rocket fuel in a sense.
Yeah.
Um because I think that's also important, right? Like having a good default meal slash beverage routine that isn't too horrifying or,
Yeah.
bad for you.
I mean, it helps you do a little bit of the ritual stuff that we've talked about, that episode on that, where you get into the zone mentally. But for me, especially because I lift 4 or 5 times a week, if I don't
Mhm.
have the nutrition routine down, I just feel terrible by like 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Oh. Do you follow Mike Israel's Renaissance periodization program?
I haven't done a cycle of that yet. I'm a big Dr. Mike stan.
Yeah, I used to have to do that for my powerlifting. And it's
Yeah,
very sad because like if you use the app, the RP app, like there are these sliders you can like adjust for so that you can try to concoct something reasonable. But
sure.
then the thing is like the protein requirement's so high and the rest is so low that it's really hard to come up with something that would fit. So
Chicken
you just
breast.
end up doing like little like macro slides all day.
Yeah, I'm too dumb. Like, okay, so I kind of
You can scan that Huel like barcode and it would like automatically calculate for you though.
that's
So it's
nice.
nice in that way.
It's nice. I'm just like, I don't know. I'm really sharp on some things, and I'm really basically like a gorilla on others. When it comes to like food prep and nutrition, I
Mhm.
take okay, we're gonna see if we can do this live. I'm having issues with this camera of I need to press a button every 30 minutes, and it's unfortunate. I discovered
Is it
that
because like you don't have the power supply?
I do have the power supply. This is a default on this camera that every 30 minutes it's just gonna do that. So I've set a timer so that I can fix it before it does it next time. We'll see if I can get it.
Oh
I
my
discovered
god.
that this morning,
Poor,
Kristen.
poor,
So this
poor
is
guy.
fun.
I didn't realize that.
Tutorizer.
Yeah.
This never gets filled because 100% energy is a myth. Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
All right, rocket ships. Kristen, you ever been on a rocket ship? Not physical, although physical would be interesting too, but like
I think there is
organizational.
a photo of me in one of these like faux NASA rocket ship things. I'll try to dig it up. Um
A fake it
uh
ship?
yeah. You mean like a metaphorical one, right?
Yeah, a thing that
Yeah.
took
I
off.
mean like currently I feel like I'm in this situation when I was I would say like towards the tail end of my PhD when things were starting to turn around in terms of experimental results. That
Uh-huh.
was like, oh, we gotta like publish this now. And
Sick.
there was a lot of like pressure to do that.
What did it feel like?
Mm, I feel for me it's it depends, but in the good state, it's like everything else drops away, right? And you only have this like tunnel vision of getting this one thing done, which can be kind of like nice
Yeah.
because you feel like not distracted and all of that. But like, of course, it also comes at the time. I feel like I'm a little bit better now than you've seen me in my various iterations of how Kristen deals with pressure.
Yeah.
A little rainbow should appear. Um, I feel I'm a little bit better now because I have exploded.
Mhm.
and I've learned that, oh, that explosion is not good. Therefore, I'm a little bit more emotionally distant from it,
Okay.
like
What
enduring.
okay. So so do you, when you so,
I think the key is like, there's like the of course there's the pressure of failure point, right? Like I don't want to fuck it up.
yeah.
And that causes, as you know, that causes me a lot of pressure. But now I'm seeing that, oh, my wanting and desire to succeed is also a kind of pressure. And you almost
Mm,
like can't have it both ways for me. So I'm
okay.
I'm kind of like detaching from both at this moment.
Got it. And do you think detaching helps you actually, do you want to be on rocket ships?
I think fundamentally, no, I don't.
Okay.
Like I feel like, that's my own personal belief, right? Like
Interesting. And do you think that that's like a function
this is why I'll
of
never be Elon Musk.
I mean, there's a lot of reasons why neither of us are going to be Elon Musk, but the like so the idea of a rocket ship type thing, like something that goes from, we'll say not successful to very successful in a short amount of time as like a
Yeah.
shorthand for it. That process doesn't feel good for you, or you don't
I'm not
like how you
optimizing for
are.
that, right?
Okay.
And
Yeah,
even
yeah, yeah.
as yesterday, as you were giving me some suggestions, you can see I wasn't optimizing for the maximal outcome, clearly.
Yeah,
I
I
was
was I was I
optimizing
was
for like calm and like ethically wise outcome, which sadly is not very worldly rewarded in financials.
well, it's not quickly rewarded in financials.
No, yeah, but I can see, right? You know what will happen. It's like I'm gonna get, all the outcomes that like, are worldly successful, but then I'm gonna feel shitty on the inside and I'll be like, oh, what a trade.
Yeah. That's interesting. I don't fundamentally, I don't think that a rocket ship has to be a betrayal of what you do, but it is a bit of a letting go of control, right?
Yes.
Like you can't light a bomb on fire and hope it gets to space and also calmly get there.
Yeah, yeah. I
So
agree.
that's
So
interesting.
when like speaking of letting go of control,
Yeah,
I'm gonna turn this back on you.
sure.
Like, what have you had to let go lately?
Well, I haven't had to let go of anything for a rocket ship, uh, because
Well,
what's the rocket ship in my life right now?
oh, as in, like, I don't think it's necessarily a rocket ship situation where one should let go. I think it just even if you're on a Toyota Camry.
I mean, I think that there are parts of. I mean, we talked about on the last show.
Mhm.
What was the show? Imposter syndrome or just imposter? Yeah, that
Yeah.
was it. Where I'm kind of grieving a slow death of my startup unless we can turn something around in the next month or two.
Mhm.
Um, and so kind of letting go of that, but it's a tricky thing as a founder to let go of a startup that you're working on because you have a duty to the people that,
Mhm.
entrusted money in you to do a good job. So I'm not letting go of it in that sense. It's just kind of like figuring out what parts of it to double down on or like pivot as opposed to like fully drop because you can't keep doing all of the things you've been doing for the past few years. Um, Other things I'm kind of like trying to let go. I mean, like I had a whole not mental break, I'll say, but like I texted Kristen. I was like, "Hey, I have to LARP as somebody who's high productive in our chat."
Yeah,
Because
yeah. And then like I was like, what do we call this other version of Cameron? It is Cameron with a zero instead of an
yeah,
O. So
yeah,
it's Cameron Zeron is what I've been calling you.
yeah. Because I had this vision of waking up and like putting on this coat of productivity, and like even though like myself didn't feel particularly productive, I could still do the things productive Cameron would do.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. So
haven't
you all
nailed that
actually
yet.
caught that suit early on in today's stream.
Yeah, for real.
And Tudorizer asks, is a rocket ship different than a roller coaster? Nothing goes up constantly. Oh, yeah.
Yes,
I
very
guess
different.
but do you think life is closer? I think life is closer to a roller coaster, right? Like you're not on a trajectory up and up, and most of us don't really explode. I think
Mhm.
most of us like do a slow dive back down.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what your Y axis is,
Mhm.
right? Like, obviously, most people don't go to space, and I think that as a metaphor kinda holds.
Mm.
Space isn't necessarily where everybody wants to go.
Mhm.
Again, beating the crap out of this metaphor, but,
I
like,
know, I know.
going to space, being successful with whatever the heck that means to you,
Mhm.
there's a lot of ways to do it. Actually, not today, but assuming our life is closer to science fiction, there should be a lot
Mhm.
of ways to get to space, like space elevators and stuff. Or you can build a tower where a bunch of people from different languages can speak to each other. I think there's a tale in that. But
Yes, that
the
that one ended well.
yeah, but no, so like a rocket ship is very much a thing that has enough potential energy or like chemical potential energy that can turn into kinetic energy to get you up into space. And
Mhm.
when you're in space, gravity impacts you, but not in the same way that it does when you're on the surface of a planet. So you can be a satellite in orbit, or you could go to other planets, all this other stuff. So,
Mhm.
like, using that as the metaphor versus roller coaster, like, yeah, most people ride roller coasters instead of going to space. But I would also say even more people just walk up and down hills.
Mhm.
And there's nothing wrong with that inherently. It's just how you want to live your life. But I would view it as like there are different ways to take higher and lower locus of control positions over your life.
Mhm.
And so, like, for me, the idea of a roller coaster isn't super appealing because it's like, a relatively low agency way of getting volatility in your life, and that's like the worst of both worlds for me. I like roller coasters in real life, but that's because they last like a minute and a half. I
Mhm.
wouldn't want to make my career be a roller coaster because that means getting on somebody else's ride.
Mhm. So in the rocket ship analogy, we're also driving the ship, right? Like
No. So
no?
so rocket ship, like, you could be riding it, you could be flying it yourself.
Oh, you're
Oft
steering it.
Oftentimes you're holding on, but the
Mhm.
point is that the rocket ship is temporary.
Mhm.
It's not a permanent state of your life. It's not the thing that you're gonna do forever.
Mhm.
And so, like, with a roller coaster, you just get back to where you started with some stressors in between. With the rocket ship, you end up in a fundamentally different place, ideally
Mm.
higher, whatever that is to you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, here we have some comments.
Yeah.
Hmm, encouraging comments
I
from
appreciate that. Yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
I think the idea of building momentum, as I'm learning now.
yeah,
Like,
momentum.
yeah.
If momentum sticks from
Mhm.
our community for the next 10 years, that I'll be happy. We don't have to succeed anything else, honestly.
Alright,
I
alright.
want it to stick so bad. The
So and I think momentum is really what in general, day to day, what we want, right? It's kinda like flow. It's like this,
yeah,
like, feeling of unstuckness, even if
it's
we're not feeling
forward
where we're
motion
going.
wherever
Yeah.
forward is.
Right, right, and I think you and I talk a lot about that, right? Sometimes, like, there are
Yeah.
days when, you and I feel like the engine's not turning on, guys. Like, and that's really rough.
Yeah, um yeah, I don't know, man. Sorry, I'm still stuck on Dirt Hippie Dungeon Master Dirt Hippie his comments. Like, I don't feel like we're LARPing as creators. I actually think we are doing the thing. It's like a small version of the thing. but it's made with a lot of love and some memes.
Mm-hmm.
And so like nothing that we're doing with the creator stuff, I particularly feel isn't the way that I want it to be. And actually, do you feel like you're living, we'll say 90+% authentically?
I think so. And I have to do it with this face.
What a bummer that is to
What
be
a
like,
bummer.
oh,
I know.
like yeah, but I feel it too, right? Like when you realize, oh, I consciously set out some values that I want to live my life by, and I'm making decisions roughly in accordance with those values, and it's still just life.
It turns out there's no bonuses for living authentically.
No, you just like, get to kind of feel maybe a little bit smugger and then immediately feel guilty that you felt smug for a second about doing the thing that you said you were going to do.
Correct. Yeah. Right. Okay, I did it with that face because, I do get a lot of feedback that, oh, Kristen, you're very authentic. But then, like, I think I would feel better about it if I was doing it, if I had a choice, maybe. Like,
Say more.
I don't feel like I have a choice but to be who I am a lot of times. And I
Well,
feel like when people say you're being so authentic, like to me, that has more weight if people have a choice to be inauthentic. Maybe that's just the artificial standard I made up.
I mean, I think that like in a lot of ways you've psyoped yourself into being authentic, which is maybe like a quasi inauthentic way of being authentic.
Right? Like if you really unpack it.
Yeah. No, I mean,
Oh.
when it comes down to it, I think the utilitarianism of it is fair.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the thing that I think I always poke you about is it's not like just because you have feelings and they make you do a certain thing doesn't mean that you didn't do the thing right. Like it's not a discount, it's not an asterisk, it's a like you have made a bunch of micro decisions in your life to basically craft your worldview around what you view as right and wrong, and both like for
Mm-hmm.
other people and yourself. And you are now bearing the fruits of the momentum of goodness or whatever word you want to use
Mm-hmm.
there. And you earned that? Question mark. Like like you didn't wake up with a role that just makes you, like inauthentically good. And so none of your good deeds count as good deeds. You've done a lot of things in your life. You've probably done bad things in your life. We all have.
Mm-hmm.
And have learned from those moments, like what you care about.
Mm-hmm.
And also through a lot of dedicated study as like a Buddhist chaplain.
Right. I think one thing in the past few weeks that I'm trying to hone on that's like practically helped me be a little bit more stable is not doing things to relieve feelings that I perceive as negative. Like and it works either way
Okay.
actually. It's sort of like, when I feel shitty, therefore I'm going to act to make the shitty feeling go away. And
Okay.
now I'm realizing that's fundamentally not helpful because it reinforces that negative feeling to reappear because it's going, that worked on her. So it's like I'm acting based on what I deem as my virtue, like, and not based on my immediate feelings. And it could be like, both like if I do this, this will make me feel good. That's also not quite correct.
Hmm.
Like, and the like that I feel like is the pressure I'm learning to endure more.
Is that the same thing as compartmentalizing?
It's recognizing which aspects of mental generation are truly coming from your sense of agency. And this
Mm,
gets into like, some sort of like very esoteric Buddhist viewpoint, which is like the
yeah,
fact that um lots of what we perceive as our thinking is not technically our thinking. And if you think of it in secular
sure.
terms, like in neuroscience, it's almost like, the more like primitive parts of your brain are generating, like your hypothalamus and brainstem generating certain
Lizard brain
actions.
loves doing
So the
stuff. Yeah,
brain
I get
wants
that.
to do the thing. Yeah. And then recognizing, oh, like, think like be very careful because it feels like you thought it, but actually you didn't. But the fact that you react to it will make you feel like that thought was yours. And that causes a cycle of behaviors that maybe is not what you want.
Kristen, I didn't plan this at all, but
Mhm.
I've been like chasing some sci-fi ideas, and this
Oh,
isn't like a super original idea, but
yeah.
so I've been diving into the concept of what I'm calling mimetic schisms.
Hmm.
All right, have you read any of the SCP lore base?
I'm making through that book that you recommended me, the anti-meme one.
It's so short. Definitely read it sooner rather than later. It's so good. Chat, if you haven't read Anti-Meme, it's a collection
Oh,
of
there is no anti-meme
yeah,
division.
there is no anti-memetics division.
Okay, yeah,
Is
yeah.
thank you for correcting me.
Oh.
It's from an online fiction project that's been around for like 15 years now, maybe more.
Mhm.
And it's all born out of this concept of anti-memes, which are ideas that when somebody communicates them to you, you basically immediately forget it outside the context of the
Oh,
conversation.
and you had a cast about it because you're saying the word "farcaster" is an anti-meme, and I totally agree. I
Yeah.
totally agree.
Okay, cool. So we'll talk about that. Tutorizer. The book title is There Is No Anti-Memetics Division.
Yeah.
Like anti-memetics like meme.
Mhm.
Um and so like anti-memes are things that you hear, you understand, like they process, and then as soon as you're out of the context that you were having that like idea enter your brain, it goes away.
Mhm.
And so which is like it's like the opposite of a meme. That's why it's an anti-meme. And so like memes are interesting because they are units of signal that embed in your brain, and then you carry them around with you. And then when somebody says, like, wow, it's so deep. And then, the meme there is like, that's what she said, right? Or whatever. Like that's a terrible version of it. But like those like memes
Yeah.
propagate themselves across the world in different contexts. And
Mhm.
that's fascinating, right? And in with the internet being what it is now, it's really important to understand how they work, or at least try to. Anti-memes are like the opposite. Because imagine there's like a piece of information that is like crucial to human life that nobody could propagate to other people.
Mhm, mhm.
And like that's anyway, that's
I
crazy.
believe this is fundamentally how it works because, okay, let's just say you are, God or some divine being and you design this world, right? And then like everyone has to go through life and it's like a game. Like
Mhm.
it would make the game end too soon if people can just share the walkthrough and the game facts with each other, right? So you would design any spiritual awakening things to be anti-memes.
I in the universe with a god with agency like that, I will take the position of that's a cruel god that doesn't want their creation to easily be happy. But anyway, not the
But maybe like it's like the end, well, to spoil it, the ending of The Good Place where you find out that if you just get everything you want, you become brainwashed.
yeah. I mean, but that's why they have the new and improved good place at the end where it's like there's the end. Anyway, anti-memes aren't the point. Definitely go read the book. It's one of the best collection of like
Mhm.
sci-fi little stories that I've read in a long time.
So what's a schism?
Okay, so a mimetic schism is I consider a subclass of a concept in the book, which I don't think came from the book, but got adapted by the community or adopted by the community of info hazards,
Mhm.
which is like an info hazard is like a Twitter term, but it's like a thing that when you learn it, it hurts you in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And so there's like super minor info hazards of like I would say the game
Mhm.
is a bit of an info hazard where like we both just lost the game. Like that's a thing that once you understand, you now are irrevocably playing the game and can never not be playing the game. And whenever you know that the game is happening, you're losing it. So we're losing the game. Everyone in the chat is losing the game. Sorry for your loss. Um, there are info hazards that are like explicitly like violent. There's some like not safe for life videos out on the internet that like when you see them, it's gonna like fundamentally hurt you as a person to like watch somebody's head get cut off or whatever. Um, schisms. And I need to go through the lore to see if this concept has come up before because I haven't read the whole lore. But like I'm kind of viewing schisms as like bits of information that change the path of how you think about things in a way that you're consciously aware of, but aren't necessarily consciously aware of how it's changing your self perception. Yeah,
Mm.
like mental viruses is like part of that. But like the idea of a schism for me is like there. I'm trying to come up with good mimetic names for it too, so it actually catches on. Because I'm gonna write a post about this. But there's like visual schisms where like once you see the red like the white and gold versus blue dress, you remember that?
Mhm, mhm.
I would call that like a visual schism where like once you perceive it a certain way, it's like very, very hard to unperceive it that way.
Mm.
And so, and I'm kind of classifying audio like earworms, like songs that get stuck in your head, as like audio schisms, and like sometimes you'll hear like a little bit of a note trail, and you're like, oh, that's the thing. I'm kind of viewing religion as like a strong form ideological schism,
Mhm.
where it's like, oh, I knew that there was a version, like I know that there's a version of me that didn't believe in this religious thing, but that version of me, like the thing that influences your perception of yourself is like not that you were a different person, it's you were wrong before.
Right.
And so like these points in time where you fundamentally change how you perceive other things, like I'm viewing those as schism moments. And like in a high agency world where you get to decide the thoughts in your head, like that's not that interesting of an idea. In a world where basically there's mimetic warfare going on all the time to influence how you
Mhm,
think, I
mhm,
think explicitly calling out p schisms, like perception schisms, which like one p schism that I've been playing around with is this idea of institutionalized misogyny,
mhm,
because like most dudes go through their entire life not noticing, not maliciously like ignoring, just like straight up not noticing, like he being the default pronoun in most books throughout history. Like I'm not
mhm,
trying to jump into one camp or another here. It's just like I think like I remember the first book that I read from somebody that I respected that used like she her pronouns a lot,
mhm,
and that was like a peaceism for me of like noticing this thing for the first time.
mm,
And then once I noticed it for the first time, I can't unnotice that.
mhm.
And so like anyway, the whole
I mean, it
excursion,
sounds like a
yeah.
mix of cognitive biases, but I don't. You should write about it because I feel like the one you're naming doesn't may not have a specific name, because it's sort of like beta Meinhof phenomenon mixed
Yeah.
with scissor statements and
Yeah.
mixed with
Like
like code programming.
the key here is the the possibility of intentional packaging of these things.
Mm-hmm.
Like this stuff, like the way that I would describe it in like a sci-fi story intro is that like
Well,
there are
propaganda is this package, right?
yeah, it's like a version of it.
Mm-hmm.
Um or it's like a way of implementing that kind of stuff. The thing that I'm interested in is actually maybe we'll save that one for another time. But there's versions of this where
Mm-hmm.
like the idea is something that isn't tied into like the world that we have today. It's just like a new worldview, right? Like, you know, say you want to embed like a new ideological swing to something.
Mm-hmm.
The interesting thing about like there is no anti-memetics division kind of thinking is that you don't have to like convince somebody of this thing. It's
Mm-hmm.
like you hand them a sheet of paper with the right sigils and glyphs, and then they are part of this ideological or perception shifting thing without
Mm-hmm.
consciously realizing it. Their just
Mm-hmm.
perception of the world is different now.
So, isn't this part of many of these three-letter agency experiments?
Yeah, very much so. I find that stuff super interesting about like I mean, like one of the big ones is like chemically aided perception shifting.
Right, right, which happened to someone who is actually becoming in the news again because of something that happened recently. So,
We want to talk about that guy.
I feel like I don't have an informed opinion, so I'll pass, and I'm more interested in the philosophical and what we're talking about, right? The schism aspects of things.
Yeah.
So I feel like a lot of my chaplaincy is based around the fact of pointing out schisms.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
I fully agree with
because
that.
I don't know whether I ever share the story on stream, but like one of my driving factors was I saw a friend fall into a Buddhist cult, like an actual
Ooh.
cult, like big
Well,
C cult.
hope your friend's okay. Interesting.
I mean, you know, they are fine. Like there's nothing like they were not like harmed in the situation, right? But like,
Yep.
you know, according to what I can obtain in terms of like, you know, news media, like
Yeah.
other people may have been harmed.
Sure.
So and I saw that like I like it's very ironic, right? Because chaplain is a very religious kind of role, but in a
Yeah.
way I'm almost like anti-religion in a
Yeah.
way of like
Yeah, yeah,
pointing
yeah.
out, hey, by the way, like these are all the mechanisms that are used to and co-opted, right? Because maybe the original founders of these religions are, you know, good-hearted and meant well, but because we are human beings and we want to exert control, a lot of these instruments are now co-opted as a form of, you know, schism and
Sure.
mind control.
Yeah, yeah.
So like what can I do while also respecting people's faiths, like kind of open up more possibilities, essentially.
Mm. So what did you come away from that with?
You have to speak in that person's worldview first,
Yeah.
even though you may not agree with it, or else there is no point of entry, right? Like, as we've seen, there's many people who are on their deathbeds during a certain, you know, pandemic
Yeah,
who
yeah, yeah.
still did not believe that they had the disease. Like, that's how deep
One of
things
one of my
are.
uncles. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, I got a whole mess of family tree in that camp.
Oh, okay, okay. That must be rough.
I mean, it's fine. They're adults. They're making their own calls. I respect
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
There's okay, interesting. All right, related. I grew up Catholic. I have Catholic guilt embedded in me, even though I'm no longer practicing. I
Mhm.
view the concept of original sin as like one of the most effective like ideological schisms
Mhm.
because it's a thing that is embedded so deep in, usually like you learn it so young, that
Yeah.
it's like,
Mhm.
I mean, it is just a maybe permanent worldview shifting idea.
Mhm.
Other interesting schism ideas are the introduction of democracy, the idea of needing to make money. Like those are things that I'm thinking about as well in this terminology.
Mhm.
The the worldview thing's super important because once your brain is schismed, like it's not even like your fault. Your brain thinks a certain way, or it like
Mhm.
runs a logic process or runs a logic loop based off of the things that it has,
Mhm.
that it has decided to be true, which is interesting.
Right. And although I know you and I debated a lot about the new Happy book, I
Yeah,
feel like it has that effect on people though. Like it is for those who are deeply embedded in the world of capitalism, like many of us are, like it is a way to see how that structure exerts certain forms of pressure that
sure.
we assume are the world defaults. I mean, of
Yeah,
course, you know, debated on the depth and how it itself is schism inducing while also schism dispelling. But you know, I think that that's why it's hard to share a point of view, even if that point of view is to dispel other points of view.
yeah. I mean, I think points of view that exist to dispel other points of view are the hardest ones to talk about
Mm-hmm.
because they're fundamentally combative. Um,
Or I
related.
guess to me, it's because they don't have a shape of their own, and we just want to hang on to shapes. We want
I don't know.
certainty.
Do I agree with? Oh, camera did the thing again. All right. So I don't know if I agree with that because it's interesting. It was 30 minutes on the dot. I can time this so that I can make this work. Um,
This
I
is like those Mr. Beast challenge things where you have to hit the timer when the thing
Yeah.
goes off or you lose $1 million.
On a long enough timeline, every channel turns into Mr. Beast. We
Mr.
just did it
Beast
too soon.
challenge.
The Okay. Okay, so Vitalik has a really good post about movements that are inherently anti are easier to start but harder to do anything with because their whole point is fire, right? It's to break
Mm,
things.
right.
It's not the same thing as what you're saying. It just made me think of it.
Mhm. I'm
I'm
on my Vitalik reading, journey, so this is
I,
helpful actually.
the Vitalik, please don't decide to destroy me. I think a lot of his writing is too boring for me. I think
Oh, I'm reading the one called "The Only Scarce Resource is Legitimacy."
yeah,
Yeah.
like I just think it's too hard to read a lot of the time. Like
Oh,
it's not
what I
fun.
do is I put the article into ChatGPT and then I query the article. I'm like, "Okay, if I do this, would Vitalik be mad?" Like, literally, that is my prompt.
I I'm torn because like obviously I'm a words maxi. I'm a word cell. I like
Yeah, yeah.
writing. I like reading.
But don't
And
you
I
think
d-
some things are like it's almost like his writing is almost like a car manual or something, right? Like I
sure.
functionally want to get something out of it. Therefore, I don't think I need to read it like word, cover to cover.
Yeah. I mean, it's it's do you think that the ideas are important or the writing is important? I'm actually
Ideas.
okay. So if
Like
we think
for the Vitalik thing idea. Like, there's some things where writing is important.
I mean it I think this is how most writing ends up, right? Because like
Mm.
everything's just trying to map signal onto an imperfect medium and then like decode it on the other end.
Mhm.
There's a good running joke about AI writing and AI summarization that like all emails are just like expanding and then compressing the same concept through an email that
Mhm.
like a person didn't
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
write and a person didn't want to read. And so like that kind of breaks part of my heart, but I like right because I want writing to be
Mhm.
a thing that is valued. But like commodity writing isn't that valuable. Like to your point, getting the nugget of the thing, maybe the schism causing thing
Mhm.
to the other party is way more important than whether you used an Oxford comma or not. And so like I don't love the idea that we can replace deep reading with just summarizing in bullet points, which is kind of like a rude way of describing what you did.
Mhm.
But also, I think most things you do kind of get the gist because, like, I mean, you're not even really reading the 10 pages of it anyway. You just like want the bullet point of it.
Yeah. I feel like if I mean, poetry is one where the words themselves are appreciated.
Maybe. I mean, no one pays for poetry, so I would argue that a lot of people don't appreciate it.
Well, I mean, you just have to make it into a physical item.
I mean, okay. So what that basically means is commodity writing, the value of it goes to zero, which we're already
Mhm.
seeing.
Mhm.
And luxury writing is the only thing that accrues value. Just like we've already figured out how to make handbags, like
Mhm.
making a bag to put stuff in that you can hold in your hand, like we can do that really, really well.
Yeah.
Like the mass market version of it, where you're getting everybody the same one, that it's like their functional thing, like that's a business.
But a good schism, is
Yeah.
it like a handbag? Because you can, there's no such thing as magical sigil and glyphs. I don't think, but a good pay meme or whatever gets people. So like that.
I mean, what is a schism if not a luxury handbag? Like the thing that is a collective delusion that the 10,000 people that get the limited edition Gucci bag or whatever, and they'll
Mhm.
pay 100 grand for it. Like the only reason that thing has value is
Mhm.
not it's not like its net asset value isn't whatever people paid for it. It's the brand value that gets associated with that thing and the relative status like competition with it.
Mhm.
And so like I actually really do think that schisms or whatever, like dumb word we want to call for it, is like the luxury writing is the thing that embeds in people's brains.
Mhm.
And all the other stuff is the equivalent of eating hardtack when you're walking down the street. Like hardtack is like commodity bread for war.
Yes, I do know what hardtack is. But
Nice.
it's I watch way too many of these history of food
That
channels.
it was more for
Um,
chat than you. For
I
some
know,
reason
I
I did
know.
expect you to read to know what hardtack was. That's funny.
Um, so this gets into the art of marketing, right?
Mm,
Like, and
mhm,
more.
mhm,
Maybe we
mhm.
can talk about that in the next stream. Like,
I
how
don't
do
know.
you? I mean, you're good at it.
I
Who
don't
knows
wanna
how
come up
many of
with a
these lores floating around on Farcaster actually came from Cameron in the first place?
I don't know
Hmm.
if that's true.
Hmm.
The the, I'm gonna be honest, I'm torn about bringing up the concept of mimetic schisms and mind jacking via linguistic warfare, and then immediately talking about how to do it. Like, that
Well, but
that
the
hurts my
tricky
heart.
part, I understand, right? Because almost like this has become a thing again, right? Like the whole idea of dark forest and how
Yeah,
like actually if you are trying to now because like there's so much attempts at hijacking, if you're trying to do something good, you have to be really careful and not overshare the
for sure.
techniques, right? So I understand from that perspective. Maybe this is what the the private okay banger community can be about if there is one, you know?
Yeah. We'll make our own schism cult and, mind jacking for good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like for
But
serious.
okay.
Um,
With rocket ships, though,
mhm.
do so you said earlier that you don't know if you would you don't know if you like rocket ships. Is there a version of rocket ships that you would like?
I feel like I don't want to like nor not like. I
Mm,
want to accept rocket ships as they are and not be, see it as what it is more realistic.
gotcha. How does somebody identify, like, what are the characteristics of a situation that might be rocket ship like? So that people can go away here and be like, "Oh,
Mhm.
we know that there's a thing. We know that there's like possibilities at the end of this thing that we're calling a
Mhm.
rocket ship. We know that there's like potential downfalls to it. Rocket ships do explode.
Yeah.
How do we
I think if you
identify?
yeah, if you fall
Yeah.
into a field that is like not mass popular enough yet, right? I mean, like,
Okay.
that's what I think, right? If it's a popular enough thing and it's no longer there's no arbitrage between you and there.
For sure. For sure.
So it's like you have some sort of like knowledge that's pretty niche that might take off, like
But
arbitrage, I think is the closest thing to rocket ships.
so okay. So the thing that I think you're describing is like, what are the conditions in which rocket ships might be found?
Yeah. Yeah,
Which,
you're technically correct.
which isn't necessarily the same thing as identifying one, right? Because there's a lot of people on Hacker News that know a lot of things about niche things that
Oh.
aren't going to be rocket ships, right? Like the guy who knows all of the sci-fi typefaces that came out from 1972 to 1979. That
Yeah.
he's got an info arbitrage, but that doesn't sound like a rocket ship to me. Of the things that you've like touched, is there something that you're like, oh, this is what made me feel like there was a engine humming that might have turned into a rocket ship?
Mm, I feel like you have encountered way more, but, of the ones that I've encountered, it's a feeling.
Mhm.
It's a somatic feeling of, like it is kind of like before the drop of a roller coaster. It's like, "Oh, like, something is about to happen."
Like anticipation mixed with trepidation, mixed with
Right, right.
like
It's not like a, "I have
euphoria.
analyzed these items, and therefore this is a rocket ship." It's never like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole army of VC thought boys that would beg to differ, but I'm in your camp. I think it is impossible to
It's
identify
mine.
truly. There, like the only thing that I've consistently found in what I'll call self-sustaining rocket ships,
Mm.
just made that up on the spot. Like, there's rocket
Mhm,
ships that go and then they run out of fuel and they crash back to Earth, or maybe they make it to space or whatever.
mhm.
But the self-sustaining ones always have a cluster of smart, competent, excited people.
Oh, like a Senius?
Kind of like a Senius, yeah. Like if that element isn't there, like just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not there. But if you like see it and there's a bunch of smart people that are hanging out, the vibes are generally good and like people are having fun,
Mhm.
like nothing motivates a smart person to work their ass off more than having fun with their friends.
Mm.
Like, you know, that doesn't mean it's easy, right? People work like themselves to death having a lot of fun with their friends.
Mhm.
But the oh, Maryam, we'll pull out some of my high school song journals. The but the but yeah, I've always found that if you find a group of like smart, competent, uh, excited people that are having fun with each other, start paying attention because it doesn't guarantee that it's going to freaking work, but it's much more likely to work than the spot where you go to and everyone's just kind of like showing up for their paycheck or whatever.
Mhm. All right. Well, I'm gonna play us out here. Thank you so much all for joining us.
Thanks y'all for sticking through our comms difficulties, the visual difficulties. We'll get a
Yeah.
new outro sometime soon. I'm
You
in the
gotta
uncanny
play
valley.
it.
Yeah, I do. I gotta get that. I mean, I got the camera set up, so that's a good signal.
Yeah.
When I get home, I will figure out the mic, the boom mic setup.
Yeah.
All
Thanks
right,
for
who
joining us,
stayed?
Marianne.
Cooterizer, Marianne.
Cooterizer.
Got a decent amount of people. All right,
Now
pop that
ship is
off.
still there.
We're gonna cut off dramatically.
Yeah. Cool
And we
beans.
got a decent amount of people from Twitter today. I mean, like, who knows? It could be bots. But if you're not bots on Twitter, thank
We
you
get
for
varying
joining
amount
us.
of bots, which is really nice.